I'd like to show you how to create your own animated poems or texts with Sea of Poe. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Options button, which takes us to some sliders that you can configure. And I'm going to change this to that. Now, what did I just do? It says time until gallery mode, and I've set that to never. Well, gallery mode in Sea of Poe kicks in if there's no mouse or keyboard input after a while. And then Sea of Poe will display one animation after the other. So that's a kind of a, auto performance feature. But when you're editing your own poems, you clearly don't want gallery mode to kick in. So I've just set this so that gallery mode is not going to kick in. Okay, so once I've done that, I go to the editor. And we see some instructions here. Let's have a look at these instructions. It says, type, paste your text here, then click animate. Or select one of your saved texts from here above. So, if you're working on some stuff yesterday and you saved it and you want to work on it again today, this is where you will find your saved texts, and we can choose one of these if we want. What does this say? It says write X caret Y to animate X, Y. What does that mean? Okay, well, let's animate my poem. And I click animate. We see that the word my is separate from the word poem. But say I wanted to animate it as one phrase. So what I would do is I would conjoin the two words with a caret. And when I click animate, sure enough, they are conjoined. The words are conjoined. And what do we get if we go my poem and click animate? And we see that there are some instances of my poem. We see that there are some instances of my, and we see that there are some instances of poem. Now, say I want to save my poem. Well, I click save. It says press OK to overwrite the saved version of this text. Well, I did save this text previously, and I'm going to press OK to overwrite that version. But that basically was just giving us the option to either create a new copy of it or overwrite the already saved version of it. Okay, now the save button is not only a save button, it's an export button. We don't see an export button here, but the save button is both the save button and the export button. What does that mean? Well, say I go to Notepad and I create a new tab, and then I paste. What do I have in the clipboard? Well, I have the text, certainly, that I created, which is right here. And then we have all this other information for the animation. This is information that Sea of Poe needs to create this particular textual animation concerning the color and the size of the text and the background color and some other stuff that we're going to have a look at. Now, what's this good for? Well, say you created a poem and you wanted to share it with a friend. You send your friend this information. What does your friend do with it? Well, your friend then goes to import and pastes the information that you sent him or her, and then clicks import. It says import successful. To save poem to your computer, click save. That is, it's assuming that it isn't already saved to your computer. Okay, so that's the save button and the import button. The delete button is going to delete this particular poem. And what's the order button? If you're going to use Sea of Poe as a performance machine, that is, you use this like a guitar. You use CFO like a guitar. You display the poem while you read it. You can use the keyboard to play the animation while you read it. Then you might want your poems in a particular order, and that's what this does. So say I want this particular one to be higher in the order, then I click that. Say I want this one to be higher in the order, then I click that. So this lets you change the order of your poems. Let me click Edit again to get back to the editor. Now what's this button? Screenshot. Well, this is kind of a deluxe feature of CFO. You can create screenshots of any size or width that you like. Currently it says that the screen is 866 pixels wide and 542 pixels high. But say I wanted to create a screenshot that was, well, I don't know, 3,000 pixels wide and 5,000 pixels high. So I click to set canvas size. Now, of course, this does not look like it's 3,000 pixels wide and 5,000 pixels high, and it isn't, but the information that it's dealing with is 3,000 pixels wide and 5,000 pixels high. So that, say I click screenshot, it's going to take a screenshot of that. Now, I should also say that this says that currently the screenshot will have a transparent background, so we won't see this purple color. We'll just see the text. However, if I were to uncheck that and then press the screenshot button, then we would see the purple because it would no longer have a transparent background. So you can have screenshots that are either transparent background or not, according to whether this is clicked or not. So say I click screenshot, what happens? Well, we have something here that has a transparent background. It has been created in a new tab of the browser, so that if I, look at the browser information here, here's CFO, and here's the new screenshot. Now, this screenshot is not saved to your hard drive unless you want it saved to your hard drive. You have to actually right-click this and click Save Image As, and then store it wherever you want it stored on your hard drive. But I'm not going to save it right now. I'm going to delete it. And here we are back at CFO. And so that's pretty much how the screenshot feature works. You may have to allow your browser to create those screenshots because the browser might consider them to be pop-up windows. So you may have to click something in here, typically, to allow the pop-up to exist. All right, so I'm pretty much finished with this sort of size of canvas. So I'm going to say make the canvas size equal to the browser size, and so we're back at having this size of a screen. Now let's get back to the options, which we looked at very briefly. Well, this lets you set a lower and an upper bound on the size of the text. Every animated text is somewhere between 15 pixels and 49 pixels. But say I increase this. Now every animated text is between 15 pixels and 119 pixels randomly. This goes up quite high. This says warning, supports text sizes large enough to take over the universe. That's actually what it says. Yes, warning, supports text sizes large enough to take over the universe. It doesn't actually take over the universe. I'm kidding. But what size are these things? Well, let's bring the density down. That is the number of on-screen texts to say 3. And let's bring this up to the max so that they're all going to be the max size. Well, these letters, maybe I'll bring this down to 1 so that we just see one of them. That looks like an M, and that M is 4.5 times the height of the browser. So that's the maximum size, is 4.5 times the height of your screen. So that's what's going on with the size slider. Let me change the density to, I don't know, 32. Maybe a bit more, 155. Okay. Then I hit the X key to reanimate it. And I'm going to hit the X key to reanimate it again and again. Okay, so that looks not too bad. So that's what's going on with the size slider. Now the speed slider, well, as you might expect, this makes it faster. And then if we put it right in the middle, that makes it motionless. And then it changes the direction. Okay, so that's what the speed slider is about. What's the trails length slider about? Well, if we set this to 1, then we see that it has some trails. The trails length, the trails are fairly small. Let me bring this density down to, 17. So we see that the trails are fairly short. If I increase this to 2, then we see the trails are a bit longer. And if I increase it all the way to, I think this is 7 or 8, then the trails are of infinite length. Well, until they're erased by, something else that obscures them. Okay, and as we said, this is the number of texts that are on screen. This is the number of animated texts. And this goes from 1 to 2,000. 2,000 is the most that you can have. If I click this button, we see some information down here. This says that the frames per second is currently 17, and there are 750, now 800 texts. So this is increasing, but it may not get to 2,000 because my computer isn't powerful enough to stand 2,000 texts without suffering a frame rate that is just too low. But it is actually still increasing. Frames per second is 28, and it is increasing. It looks like it might even get to 2,000. Yep, it got to 2,000. But say I were to increase the size of this. Now, it's not going to get to 2,000 this time, because when I increase the size of the text, that makes it harder for the machine to animate every one of those letters, every one of those words, every frame. It just can't do it without slipping below a frame rate that CFO judges to be the frame rate at which it's not going to add any more letters. So how far is it going to get this time? Well, it's not doing too bad, but you see that the frame rate, you see that the frame rate is really quite slow. It says it's 32, but it's more like 2 or 3 frames per second. And it's still increasing, but how far is it going to get? 1,022, 1,042, 1,080. Well, the point is that you may set the density to something very high, but CFO may say, I'd like to do that, but I just can't in all good conscience. Keep on adding letters to the point where the browser is going to be toast. You're going to have to restart your browser because there's just too much computation going on. So it won't do that to you. So it lets maximalists be maxi while saving them from themselves, which is really the thing that you have to do as a developer. You have to let people do what they want to do, try as much interesting stuff as they want, but you can't let them hang themselves. You can't let them, make their computer stop working. You have to let maximalists be maxi, but save them from themselves. And that's what CFO does. Okay, so that's the density slider. Well, let's bring the density slider down to, 69. So we see that the animation is much smoother now. So what's going to determine the frame rate, the smoothness of your animation is the size, but also the density of the text. Now, what's going on here? Well, if I click this, then some of the texts are going to be bold, and some of them are not going to be bold. Let me bring the trails link so that we can see them better. Some of the text will be bold and some of them won't be bold. If that isn't checked, then none of them are going to be bold. But yeah, so we see we've got a few bold ones in there. And same with italic. If I click italic, then some of them are going to be italic and some of them aren't, randomly. Mode messages, well, if I click mode messages and then I press the G key to enter gallery mode, then we see a message down here. It's in interactive mode. Well, it went into gallery mode. So let me press the G key again. It's in gallery mode. We see that message. But once I move the mouse, it goes back into interactive mode. Okay. Now, interactive mode is when you make all the decisions. When it's in gallery mode, on the other hand, let me do that. Let me press G for gallery mode to put it into gallery mode. Then what happens is that every now and then, CFO will display a different animation. It will display your next animation. Okay, so what about colors? Click colors. Now this is quite fun. I like this. This lets us change the colors. So say I set that, then we've got basically random colors here. And this is the HSLA color model. H for hue, S for saturation, L for lightness, A for alpha. If you know the HSLA color model, that's great. If you don't, what does it mean? Well, the colors are arranged as in the spectrum. If you've studied chemistry or physics or science, pretty much of any type, you may have run across Roy G. Biv. He should be a good friend of yours, Mr. Roy G. Biv. Who is Roy G. Biv? Well, he's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And that's the order of the colors here. Red, orange is in there, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Okay, so Roy G. Biv. So the colors are arranged here. And we can set a range of colors. So now we see that all the colors are between green and blue. If I go over here and change this to that, then we see all the colors are between this color and this color. All right, so that's how you set the hue of the poem. The range of hues of the poem, I should say. And what's saturation? Well, if I set saturation to 0, that's grayscale. The saturation that is 0 is grayscale. Let me set the saturation, on the other hand, to 100. So saturation of 100 is eye-popping color. There's no grayscale here. So if I set this one to 0 and this one to 100, then we see that there's a wide range of saturations. Some of them are grayscale and some of them are eye-popping color. So that's the nature of the saturation parameter. What about the lightness parameter? Well, if I set both of these there, then everything is black. And if I set both of them up here, then everything is white. But the normal lightness value for color is 50. So if I set everything at 50, then it looks sort of like normal color. But you can set a range of lightness values so that you get a range of lightness, which is good. And alpha, well, alpha is the transparency. Say I set it to 100, then all of the words are 100% opaque. You can't see through them at all. But if I bring this down like so, and I increase, say, the size so that we can see what's going on more, we see that, we can see through them. We can see through the words more now. Let me go back to options and back to colors. So that's what's going on with the alpha slider. What about the background color? Well, yeah, you guessed it. This lets us change the background color. So let me click the options button again. Now I'm going to talk about a button that wasn't in the rest of the video. I've just added it recently after the first version of this video was produced. So I'm adding this part of the video later. And that's the fonts button, which we see right now over here. So if I click the fonts button, we get this screen, which lets you use fonts that are installed on your machine. Now, in normal apps, not web apps, but normal apps, developers have access to the system font list. So a developer can query the system for the full set of the fonts that are installed on the user's machine. However, that is not possible with web apps because it is deemed a security risk, which is pretty odd. What sort of security risk? Well, the idea is that if web developers have access to the full list of system fonts, then they can use that for what's called fingerprinting users. The idea being that the list of fonts installed on a computer is unique to that computer, which in itself is highly questionable, especially these days. Maybe it is true for designers who install fonts and developers, people who are interested in fonts, writers maybe. But I think for the most part, people don't install their own fonts. They rely on the fonts that are installed on the system by programs such as Word or Photoshop, or any app on your machine can install fonts. So the list of fonts is probably not especially unique for users. Okay, so I don't have access to the full list of system fonts. Well, what can I do to help the user use fonts that are installed on their system in that case? Well, I check a list of about 100 common fonts at the beginning of the program to see whether they are probably installed. The method that I used is not conclusive, utterly conclusive, that it is installed, but I check a list of 100 fonts to see if they are probably installed. And if they are probably installed, then I make them available. So here we see a list of fonts used. These are the fonts that CFO is currently using. Here we see a list of fonts available. This is a larger list. Everything in here is in this list. Fonts available. So, yeah, longer list. And then over here we have a box where you can add a font to the font menu. It must already be installed on your machine, as the text says. Okay, so how do you use this stuff? All right, well, if you want to remove a font that's already used, you just click it in the fonts used box and it's no longer used. It's still over here, but it's not over here. And how do you make a font that's over here but isn't over here in here? Well, you just click it. If I want Acme font, which is a big fat font, then I click it and yep, we see it showing up over here. I want to see what it looks like as opposed to all these, so I'm going to click this to get rid of it, get rid of Times, get rid of Trebuchet, get rid of Tahoma, Verdana, and Arial. And all that's left is Acme font, and so that's what Acme font looks like. All right, well, say I want to use a font that isn't in any of these, isn't listed here. It's on my machine, but it's not listed here. Okay, well, first let me go down and raise the system font list. I'm not doing this in CFPO, I'm doing this in Windows. Let me look at the Windows Fonts control panel. So, what do we have? What's an interesting one that we can add? How about Monstapix? Monstapix. All right, let's see if we can add Monstapix. So I type it over here, and I don't think capitalization is important. Monstapix. So I click Add Font. This says Monstapix is installed and now in use. So currently it's using Monstapix and Acme font. Let me get rid of Acme font so it's just using Monstapix. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of italic. So that's how you add a font. And were I to save this, so I go back here. Oops, no, I go over here and I click save. I'm going to, oh yeah, create a text first. All right, well, yeah, the text that I've been using is actually Lionel Kearns's text from the list of invited writers. If you want to save something, you have to create your own text. Okay, so I'm going to say this is Monstapix, and then I'm going to animate that. And yep, there's the monsters. So if I click save, it says text saved. It is now accessible via the orange drop-down menu of your saved texts. And where's that? It's right here. So let me restart CFPO and see whether that's going to persist over sessions. So restart it. Ding, ding, ding. Go to the edit, and then I'm going to select your saved texts. And where's my Monstapix? Here they are. Yep, still have the Monstapix font. So that is, whenever you save stuff, your own work, it will save the fonts that you install on that machine. This won't work for other people on other machines that don't have Monstapix installed. It has to be installed on your machine for it to work. But I think that's pretty much the full spiel on the fonts button. Finally, what I'd like to do is show you some stuff that's available under the Help tab. If I click that, that takes us to this page. This document is very useful if you are going to be making your own animations, because this is the manual for CFPO, such as it is. It is a manifesto, a manual, and a magazine. The manifesto is about the app zine and its interesting possibilities. The manual is how to use CFPO, including how to create your own texts. And the magazine part includes a visual representation of each poem by the invited writers in CFPO. And then there are videos. There's an introduction to CFPO that's not so much about how to create your own animations as just generally all about CFPO and what it is, what controls do, stuff like that. Creating poems/animations, well, that's this video that we're watching at the moment. And then there's a video, CFPO in Tokyo Poetry Journal. And then further down in the Help tab, we have the menu. This tells you what these buttons do. And if you click any of these, it takes you to that tab. Like if I click the Edit tab, it takes us to the Edit tab. And then we have the keyboard controls. CFPO has pretty good keyboard control, and this is it. And then further down, there's other stuff on Help. It's a reiteration of the keyboard control plus other stuff for touch and mouse control. Anyway, I believe that's about it. Thanks for checking it out. And I hope you enjoy CFPO. Thanks very much.